Lennon is a convicted armed robber. A jury in 1999 found him guilty of robbing 2 taxi drivers. Mamdani says that nobody's perfect.
America, you're not going to believe this. While New York City is staring down a budget deficit between $5 billion to $8 billion, Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani is out here begging for millions of dollars to fund a 400-person transition team that includes convicted armed robberies as criminal justice advisors. This guy hasn't even taken office yet, and he's already proving he's the most fiscal, irresponsible mayor in New York City history.
We put together a team of more than 400 New Yorkers who are on 17 different committees. And these are New Yorkers who bring with them both a fluency of the policies and politics of the city, the places that they've succeeded, the places that they've failed. And we will take all of their experiences and their analysis into account as we build a city for each and every person.
What is up, guys? Tyson DeLaCruz here. Thank you so much for rocking with me. This is what happens when you elect a democratic socialist who's never ran anything in his life, and he thinks taxpayer money grows on trees, and hiring gangsters to advise criminal policy is somehow a good idea. Let me break down this absolute insanity of what Zohran Mamdani just did. He appointed a guy named Masan Lennon to his criminal justice transition committee. Now, many of you are probably asking, Tyson, who is Monsoon Lennon? He is a 49-year-old convicted armed robber who spent 7 years in state penitentiary for being part of a vicious robbery crew that terrorized cab drivers in the Bronx. This wasn't some minor offense. This was a guy part of a crew that pulled off multiple armed robberies, including one where they robbed and stabbed a cab driver named Joseph Aziri on June 8th, 1997. They also robbed another cabbie at gunpoint on March 30th, 1998. Monsoon faced up to 25 years behind bars before taking a plea deal. And now, all of a sudden, because he did time, he wants to be a quote-unquote community activist. Just because you got caught doesn't mean you're qualified to advise the mayor on criminal justice policy. How does a gangster, a criminal, get rewarded with a position on a transition team? What in the flying crap is going on here?
Mayor-elect Mamdani said last week that he would stop the NYPD from cracking down on homeless encampments. That sparked controversy. Well, today he met with business leaders and homeless advocates.
This has been one of the biggest issues facing New York City for decades. How do you find housing for so many who don't have a place to live?
So he's hiring convicted criminals to advise him while promising to let drug addicts and mentally ill people camp out on sidewalks. This, my friends, is his vision for New York City. Now here's where the story gets even more disgusting. The widow of Joseph Aziri, the cab driver who was mugged by Masan's crew, was absolutely appalled when she learned about his particular appointment with Zohran Mamdani. And her reaction perfectly captures what every normal person thinks about this particular decision. She asked, "Are you crazy? Somebody that committed that kind of crime, and then you make him an advisor on criminality? Please." To me, he's no good, she says. Why would you give him a position like that? According to this article, her husband died of a heart attack last year and said that he never shook the trauma of the robbery. Think about that. This guy spent the rest of his life traumatized by Masan and his crew, and now Mamdani is rewarding Masan with the prestigious position advising the mayor of New York City. The widow said her husband would have protested against this appointment. She said, let him advise people on how not to be criminals, not advise the mayor on criminality. But Zohran,
thank you, come again,
Mamdani doesn't care about the victims. He doesn't care about the cab driver who was traumatized for life. He doesn't care about the widow who watched her husband suffer from trauma until the day that he died. All he cares about, guys, at least in my opinion, all he cares about is virtue signaling and proving how progressive he is by hiring convicted criminals. And here's the thing about these so-called violence interrupters. We talked about it before on this channel. It is a complete grift. Cities across America are hiring former criminals and gangsters with taxpayer dollars to supposedly interrupt violence in their communities. But what they're really doing is hiring thugs and gangsters on the public payroll to do more gangster crap. Masan rebranded himself as a violence interrupter after getting out of prison. He founded a nonprofit called Rising Kings that teaches classes to inmates at Rikers Island. And now he's being rewarded with the position in the mayor's transitional team. This, my friends, is the progressive aggressive playbook: commit crimes, go to prison, rebrand yourself as a community activist or violence interrupter, and then get hired by a progressive politician who wants to prove how compassionate they are. Meanwhile, the actual victims of these crimes get forgotten and ignored. The retired NYPD chief of the department, John Schell, said it perfectly. It's just another appointed advisor that has a questionable past, which is in line with some of the other recent appointees who are anti-police and anti-establishment. The optics and the reality here to point a potential erosion of public safety in New York City. And that is exactly right. Mamdani is building an advisory board based on criminals. He's surrounding himself with people who have spent time in prison, who have victimized innocent New Yorkers, and who fundamentally don't believe in law and order. Now let's talk about the financial disaster that Zohran Mamdani is walking into. New York City is facing a budget deficit between $5 billion to $8 billion. The Citizens Budget Commission, a nonpartisan fiscal watchdog, said that while the city's November 2025 financial plan update shows stronger than expected revenue, significant spending gaps remain. The CBC said that at least $4 billion in annual planned spending remains unfunded in the coming years, including roughly $1 billion for rental assistance through city fees and $600 million for homeless shelters. So Mamdani is inheriting a city with a massive budget deficit, underfunded programs, and serious fiscal challenges. And what's his response? Beg for more money.
I hope very soon not to have to ask you for money. But until then, I'm asking.
Beg for millions of dollars to fund a 400-person transition team that includes convicted criminals. The fiscal watchdog warned that Mamdani will need to close a $5 to $8 billion budget gap while preparing for federal cuts and advancing his priorities. But instead of focusing on fiscal responsibility, he's building a massive bureaucracy of transition team members who will all expect to be rewarded with city jobs. Let's talk about this 400-person transition team. Zohran, thank you very much. Mamdani has appointed 400 New Yorkers across 17 different communities, including a 20-member criminal justice team. This guy needs millions of dollars just to transition into becoming mayor. He has absolutely lost his marbles. Most mayors have transition teams of maybe 50 to 100 people, but Zohran, thank you very much. Mamdani needs 400 people. Why? Because he's building his socialist machine. He's rewarding political allies, activists, and supporters with prestigious positions on his transition team.
Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani met this morning with real estate leaders and members of the Partnership for New York City to figure out ways to cut red tape when it comes to housing the homeless.
It takes 252 days on average to fill an affordable housing unit, which in the most expensive city in the United States of America should be the easiest thing that we do.
And you're probably asking, what are these 400 people going to do? According to Mamdani, they're going to help build a city for each and every person, whatever the heck that means. That's progressive code for massively expanding government spending on social programs while ignoring the fiscal reality that the city is going broke. The city council speaker and financial committee chair are already sounding the alarms. They said in a joint statement that placing tens of millions of dollars in future budgets without a clear path could contribute to growing budget gaps and leaving funds unused. Even the city council, which is controlled by Democrats, is calling out Mamdani's fiscal irresponsibility. That, my friends, is how bad it is. When your own party is warning you about budget problems before you even take office, you know, thank you very much is in trouble. And you know what? Congratulations to Zohran Mamdani. Good for him. He wants taxpayers to pay for permanent housing for homeless, not temporary shelter, not transitional housing, permanent housing paid for by taxpayers who are already struggling with the highest cost of living in America.
The question, however, is whether we will be satisfied by just shuttling those New Yorkers to another equally cold place in our city, or whether we want to connect them to housing.
Sounds compassionate, right? Except he's not talking about helping people getting back on their feet. He's talking about giving people free, permanent housing with no requirements, no accountability, and no expectations that they'll ever become self-sufficient.
David Giffen is the executive director of the Coalition for the Homeless and says other mayors have failed to connect the homeless to housing. He hopes that isn't the case with Mamdani's team.
What we're hoping is that this current administration will really pull those two things together and reduce all those administrative obstacles, create more permanent housing, and focus on getting homeless individuals and families moved into apartments. That's how you solve the problem.
The Coalition for the Homeless is praising this approach because they're part of the homeless industrial complex. They make money off of homelessness. This is the grift. The more homeless people there are, the more funding they'll get. They'll have zero incentive to actually solve the problem. And here's the reality that Zohran Mamdani doesn't want to talk about. New York City already spends billions of dollars on homelessness every single year. The problem isn't lacking funding. The problem is that progressive policies enable drug addicts, mental illness, and dependency instead of requiring accountability and treatment. And while thank you very much Mamdani is promising free permanent housing for homeless people, a new report says that more than 40% of New York City families can't afford weekly food costs. Let that sink in. Working families who pay taxes and follow the rules can't afford to feed their children. But Mamdani wants to give free permanent housing to people who refuse to work. 1 in 3 New Yorkers and 40% of families do not have enough money to feed their household. That's according to a poverty tracker report released by Robinhood and Columbia University.
And this is not just, an instance of extreme economic deprivation, but rather working people that, are gainfully employed and are still finding that their wages can't keep up with these rising food prices.
But Mamdani's priority isn't helping working families. His priority is giving free housing to homeless people and hiring convicted criminals to advise them. And let's not forget that, thank you very much, Mamdani has already announced that he's going to stop NYPD from clearing out homeless encampments. He thinks it's inhumane to remove people from sidewalks and parks.
Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani is addressing the affordability and housing crisis plaguing the city while defending his stance on homeless encampment suites.
He's getting a lot of pushback on it.
Mayor Eric Adams warned that human waste and drug paraphernalia will increase if Mamdani stops clearing out these encampments. Governor Kathy Hochul said allowing New Yorkers to sleep on sidewalks and under bridges is not a humane solution.
Mayor Mamdani ensures that we connect those New Yorkers with actual housing. We have to look at the efficacy of the Adams administration's policy on this. It is a policy that did not connect a single New Yorker to permanent housing in an entire year. That cannot be a policy we continue.
But the rapper turned mayor
we run in this taxi, go from border to border.
doesn't care what the outgoing mayor or the governor thinks. He's going to let homeless encampments spread across the city because that's what his progressive base wants. Never mind that it'll destroy the quality of life for everybody else.
Well, New York Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani is encouraging residents to know their rights when dealing with ICE agents.
And on top of everything else, Mamdani is also encouraging New Yorkers to resist ICE enforcement. Of course he is. So he's going to protect illegal immigrants from deportation while letting homeless encampments spread and hiring convicted criminals to advise them. This is his vision for New York City. America, Zohran Mamdani hasn't even taken office yet, and he's already proving he's going to be the most fiscal irresponsible mayor in New York City history. He's begging for millions and millions of dollars to fund a 400-person transition team that includes convicted armed robbers as criminal justice advisors. New York City is facing a budget deficit up to $8 billion. Working families can't afford to feed their children. The NYPD is losing 316 officers per month. And Mamdani's priorities are hiring gangsters, stopping homeless encampment clearance, and giving away free permanent housing with no accountability. The widow of the cab driver who was robbed by Mamdani's new advisor asked the perfect question: are you crazy? That is what every New Yorker should be asking right now. Are you crazy for electing this guy? The violence interrupter program is a grift. The 400-person transition team is a socialist machine. The permanent housing promise is a fiscal disaster waiting to happen. And the decision to hire convicted criminals as advisors is an absolute insult to every victim of crime in New York City. Let me know what you think about this. Drop it down in the comment section down below. Smash the like button if you kindly would. Share, subscribe, and as always, guys, I'll catch you on the next one.